right? And I want to look at Hawaii. I mean, there's another gun grab going on,
which is crazy.
So the Hawaiian Supreme Court, in a unanimous ruling, ladies and gentlemen, basically said that the aloha spirit trumps the U.S. Constitution and the right to carry arms. So forget about Bruin versus New York, forget about Heller versus D.C., which the Supreme Court has already decided, right? We don't like those laws. And the aloha spirit, meaning the woke culturalism that is now in Hawaii, trumps the U.S. Constitution. Here's what they said in Hawaii. Article 1, Section 17 of the Hawaiian Constitution mirrors the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, said the Supreme Court's decision. We read those words differently than the current U.S. Supreme Court. We hold that in Hawaii, there is no state constitutional right to carry a firearm in public. The spirit of aloha clashes with a federally mandated lifestyle that lets citizens walk around with deadly weapons during day-to-day activities. And the history of Hawaiian Islands does not include a society where people move about the community to possibly combat the deadly sins of others.
Wow.
So basically, jump in here. The Hawaiian Constitution, the ruling is that the U.S. Constitution in Hawaii is no longer the supreme law of the land.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, I mean, I guess if Texas wants to secede, so can Hawaii. Good luck with that, Hawaii. But you know what it makes me think of, Robert? You know how they had that whole disaster and the people there are super mad at their government for all of their failings? I almost sort of feel like maybe the government is afraid of their citizens and are now trying to exercise a little elbow grease in how they're handling that.
On this one, we disagree. If anything, the government is not afraid of its citizens. The citizens are afraid of the government, right? I mean, that's more of my line. But, my solution to this is very simple. See, I think we should all sort of do what they did in feudal Japan. We just all walk around with swords, right? because part of the problem, like it's the whole thing with capital punishment, right? Part of the problem is capital punishment, to really go down the rabbit hole. Capital punishment is supposed to be a deterrent, but it's also supposed to be a punishment, right? And when you took capital punishment out of the public eye, right, you made it this sanitary thing that you do, in prison, nobody sees it, right? Whether it's by lethal injection or hanging or firing squad or whatever it is, right? You sanitized it, right? And it's the same thing with self-defense, right? I mean, you need to, if I can shoot you from 5 miles away, I mean, who knows? Right. I'd much rather see the whites of their eyes, and we should all walk around with samurai swords. It works. I mean, except I won't have a top knot. What do you think, Ericka? Where'd you go?
Somewhere. I think you would look great with a top knot. No, Robert, I was getting myself set up with a prop to come back on screen with you.
Where's the prop? Let me see. Oh, a lightsaber.
I think that we should all have lightsabers
as we walk around. May the force be with you. But seriously, it's another example of a gun grab, and it's not only it's one thing. So the state of Washington recently proposed a bill that they realize they cannot outlaw firearms. So now what they're doing is they are for, and quote unquote, this is in the bill, quote unquote, for the privilege of being able to buy ammunition. We are going to pass an 11% tax on ammo in the state of Washington. So can't get the guns, go for the ammo. I mean, I understand that but they're at least not transgressing.
Dude, this is all with the Supreme Court. First of all, the Supreme Court has already ruled on two really important things.
Bruin versus recently. New York and Heller versus DC.
Exactly. And there's more. There are more cases in the Supreme Court's docket this year that are going to be speaking to the Second Amendment, to gun rights. So, all of these states that are filled with lily white sissy people who think that...
Could they be lily black or lily
black sissy people?
Why is it always lily white? I think that's a racist term.
Well, wait, aren't lilies white though? Isn't that the...
Do I look like a florist? Do I look like a florist with a green thumb?
Dang it. No, they're okay. So cowards, these freaking cowards I just, it's so funny too. Benjamin always says, like, there's all these black people who are out there being like, oh, the police are trying to kill us and everyone's trying to murder us. And oh, we're so scared and we're afraid. And yet they're the same people who are running around like trying to take your right to self-defense away. So either the cops are racist and everyone's trying to kill me, and I need to be walking around with freaking body armor on and strapped to the hilt so I can defend myself, or you're lying. You're making crap up. Which one is it?
And look, you make a good point. I go to a much more fundamental issue beyond sort of the, I won't call it fun, but the fun we're making of all this. There's a very serious concept here.
Yeah.
You now have a state that is saying that its law supersedes federal law. Mm-hmm. And again, look, it's going to make its way to the Supreme Court. We all know that. Logically, the assumption is going to be that it will be either returned to the Supreme Court, the Hawaiian Supreme Court, or it will be just overruled outright. But then you come back to, based on the rationale laid out by the Hawaii Supreme Court, what happens then? Because they're basically saying, they're essentially saying, we know what the Supreme Court of the United States has said in these cases. We disagree with it. Our local culture trumps, no pun intended, or perhaps pun very intended, the Supreme Court of the land. So it's no longer the unifying document, and it's no longer the sacrosanct law of the nation. And it's inevitable, right? When you start ignoring state laws, eventually it creeps up, and then you're going to start ignoring federal laws. And then after that, you're going to start ignoring the Supreme Court, which, by the way, Biden administration, they rule against Biden on the student loan. What do? Well, we're not going to pay attention to that. We're going to go around it this way. Rather than honor the spirit of the law, they're going to find another way to do it. So nothing is sacrosanct, and not even the U.S. Constitution.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. The Biden administration isn't upholding its own responsibilities. And so Texas is having to defend itself. Right. And so, I mean, I defend Texas's right to defend itself. Now, I think Hawaii is a bunch of crazy people.
Say that again. You defend Texas's right to defend itself.
Right. Exactly.
Is that like a double defense?
It is. It's super extra defendatory. Okay.
Did you just make up that word?
I made up that word. I 100% made up that word.
You're like a walking malaprop.
So, yes. I have no idea what that word means, but I'm going to go.
You make it up as you go along in terms of the words you use, not the content of your information, but the words.
It is true. It is true. And so I just think, the evidence that the federal government has lost its authority or its consent, that it has lost the consent of the governed, is the fact that everyone's saying, screw you, federal government, we're going to go do what we want anyway. And so I think that is another consequence of the outrageous overreach that we've seen from the executive branch and the legislative branch. You guys do what you want. The rules don't apply to you, but they apply to us. Kiss off.
See, I don't think the legislative branch is overreached. I don't think they've even underreached. They don't reach at all. They don't pass anything. They don't do anything. Folks, when was the last time we had a balanced budget on time? That's their job.
That's a good point. I guess a lot of that is
they had a clear bill. Their job is to pass bills that are clear. And by the way, folks, their job is to read the bill before they decide how to vote on it, as opposed to, well, we have to pass the bill to figure out what's in it.
That's true. Well, and then I guess you're right. It does come back to everything ends up landing in the executive branch, because all of the implementation of the laws is obfuscated to the unelected fourth branch of government that we talk about all the time, the administrative state or the deep state.
Right. Well, the deep state is different than the administrative state, by the way. The deep state is focused on the intelligence community. The administrative state is something a little bit different.
But they both suck. We hate them both.
Look, this only changes when people get out and vote and they say they've had enough. It's the movie Network, where Albert Finney sticks his head out the window and says, "I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore." And until that happens, we are spitting in the wind, and literally, right? And folks, we're in a civil war now. It's just not a hot war, right?
Yeah.
There is, we say it till we're blue in the face. Borders, language, culture. Thank you, Michael Savage, right? The culture war we have lost, right? We're losing. I mean, and by the way, and now you have an external enemy that half the country doesn't want to admit we're at war with, or is at war with us, which is China, right? Did you hear about what happened in Maine? They found, I want to say 300 marijuana farms in Maine, owned by the Chinese mafia or Chinese organized crime, right?
Yeah. Now, people don't realize there's actually a lot of illegal Chinese immigrants in the Northeast, but please continue.
Let me connect the dots. And if we run long, Lord Benjamin, we're going to run long on this one. Let me connect the dots for everybody. So they've now discovered, they've now discovered 300 hidden marijuana farms in Maine owned by Chinese organized crime, right? They also, if you remember an earlier show, they found that bioweapons lab in California where they were making all sorts of really nasty biological weapons. They've also found that China is buying up farmlands. They've also found out, here's the other thing, the U.S. government just came out with, and this is about 4 days old, Chinese hackers have had access to the U.S. infrastructure for at least 5 years.
What?
Right. Oh, yeah. I can't make this up. Now, what is our infrastructure? So our infrastructure is water treatment plants, the electric grid, our oil and natural gas pipelines, and transportation systems. And what they basically say, and by the way, this was the Joint Cybersecurity Advisory that was issued, and it not only includes the U.S. that was in on this, but it includes other countries, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the U.K. And it says that the Chinese hackers had total access to the U.S. infrastructure, but remained dormant inside the system for 5 years, right? You want to talk about being asleep at the switch? So connect the dots with all of this. China, ladies and gentlemen, is at war with us. We are, unfortunately, not at war with them. This is an active war.
How?
Right? This is your government, folks. I am from the government. I'm here to help you, except I don't do jack.
Did they know that they had access for 5 years, or did it take them 5 years to discover that they had access? I'm sorry.
It took them 5 years to discover. Well, okay. According to the article, it took them 5 years to discover it. Now, it's really egregious if they knew about it for 5 years and did nothing about it. Of course, then you have the Biden campaign, who is now going back on TikTok after they banned the U.S. government from being on TikTok because it's obviously a Chinese, the Chinese scroll, pull information from there.
Right.
So there's this inconsistency, but the biolabs in California, you got to know there's others, the marijuana farms, the fentanyl that they're bringing into the country to kill Americans in sort of an active war. Yep. What else do we have here, right? The hidden police stations, they're buying up farmlands. Folks,
the balloon, remember the weather balloon,
right? But
that went by.
Understand one thing. Here's the other thing people don't understand. There is no distinction in China, much like there's no distinction in Russia, between the government, organized crime, and the business community. They are overlapping in one and the same. So to say, well, it's only organized crime, there's no distinction. Does anybody think, honestly, that organized crime in China operates independently of the totalitarian People's Republic government under Xi Jinping? Really?
Anybody who says that is a liar or stupid. You can't, as a Chinese citizen, get a house without permission from the government.
Right.
You can't. You have to have permission to get a job. Okay. They have a social credit system in place actually for real. You cannot start a business in China without their permission, without them being involved, without them having ownership. Give me an absolute break. There's no way, no how a government that can lock its own people in their apartments because they have COVID is going to let organized crime run around unchecked.
But look, it's true in Russia as well. There is an overlap or sort of a symmetry, if you will, between government, business, and organized crime. They are integrated with each other. Now, there might be certain nuanced distinctions, and we can talk about Russia on some other show, and we can talk about China if anyone wants to get into the weeds. You can email me, Robert, at coalition4america.com, just like a couple people did after the last show. More than happy to answer you, but you still got to connect the dots here. We are in a war with China. The only problem is we don't acknowledge it. We still think that China is a trade partner or they're just a political adversary. This is war. If you're going to, so basically they infiltrated the U.S. infrastructure, and we're sitting there, and they could, I mean, think about the havoc they could create if there was ever an open confrontation with China. Why would China even bother to invade this country? They can take us down from within, right?
That's right.
They are taking down the citizenry in terms of the fentanyl, the marijuana farms, organized crime. Yeah, okay. And they're buying up farmland usually, and they're buying up around military bases, right?
Yep.
You
That's
know
the
that there's a
thing.
whole lot. And how many Chinese nationals are now coming in through the southern border?
A lot.
A lot.
I
right?
think they said it was like, wait, I don't want to lie. I thought somebody said something about 10%, but I don't remember if that was like one location. I think that might have been one crossing. They were now seeing like 10% of the people were Chinese nationals.
And I don't have the numbers, Ericka. We can go back through the numbers. But again, if this isn't a clarion call, so you have Chinese hackers who clearly had nothing to do with the CCP, of course.
Right. Of
who
course.
were infiltrated the U.S. system. By the way, here's the most disturbing thing in this article that I want to read everybody. Now, this is the FBI Director Wray said the following in response when he appeared before Congress. If each one of the FBI cyber agents and intel analysts focused exclusively on the Chinese threat, on nothing but China, Chinese hackers would still outnumber FBI cyber personnel at least 50 to 1. Wray says this in testimony in April of 2023. And you just go, I mean, what is the government do, other than suppressing our rights, other than trying to get Joe Biden, Pa Joe reelected, Grandpa Joe, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
I mean, FJB, whatever you want to call him, folks. Right. So what's the government really doing other than turning a blind eye to China, throwing money at Ukraine in a war they cannot win, which wouldn't have been started if Trump was president.
Right.
Right.
I mean, this is when you go again, what are you people doing? Who is in charge? Why are we not like all of us who are normal people? And wait
a minute. I'm a lot of things. I'm not normal. Don't call me normal. Don't insult me. Don't call me normal.
I'm just saying.
It's like the worst words.
We're not
You're normal,
like,
Robert.
You didn't get raised. I didn't get raised as like a foreign dignitary. I'm not like learning how to be a diplomat or, I feel like I'm a pretty normal, average person.
So we're not the hoi polloi. We're not the hoi polloi.
No, but I happen to, I guess I pay attention to politics. So maybe I know more, but whatever. But if I can figure this crap out and see that there's a problem and I don't even know the inner workings and intricacies of all the other crap that goes on behind the scenes, then I know that there is a problem. And I know that y'all know that there's a problem, and you care more about the money, about access to their cheap labor. You care more about other things than you care about our national security. And that's fine. I disagree with you, but that is a take you can have. I think it's more important that we have cheap slave labor from China than we have our borders secure. Okay, sure.
I don't know.
You're wrong. You shouldn't be elected to office, but you can have that opinion.
Ericka, this is pretty simple. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really simple. Ask yourself this question. If 30 people were trying to break into your house, would you consider that a home invasion?
Yes.
And if your answer is yes, then the people coming across the southern border is an invasion of this country. This is not, a kind of pregnant thing. This is you're either pregnant or you're not, right? But it does go back to American values.